Okay, Chris, did you like the drive?
Well, I didn't drive it, did I? I had to sit in the passenger seat. I never liked being a passenger.
It was still a drive,
Look,
was
it
it?
feels like a GT3.
It is a GT3.
But I'm strict on this. I don't take my opinions from other people driving it. And it's your car. You're not going to say it's rubbish.
Hey, I'm not the other people. I'm AP.
Look,
but I have something to show you. It's just a small thing for the end of the trip. It's a small garage where we collected some cars, and I thought you might be interested in it. So
always like to see GT
let's have a short look.
Go on then.
Open sesame.
Sorry? Just a few cars?
I mean, they're not all the cars we did, but they're a little bit kind of a collection. And all of that cars were project cars, and they're all like new, and we keep collecting them, and there's like the Ark Noah, one of each kind, and that's where they are, that's where they live, that's their headquarters.
You know, a lot of normal people dream of either beautiful women or beautiful men, and that's what they do. I dream of this. This is my dream. So this is where it all began.
That's where it all began. That was my first car I used in the first project that I oversaw. It was a Gen 2 of the 996 series.
But this wasn't your car, was it?
This exactly was the car I drove most in 2000, 2001, 2002 in the development phase of the second gen GT3.
So because you
most of my ideas
because you
was
didn't
better
develop
on the
this
second
one.
gen I got from that one.
So because you didn't develop this one, I can say a couple of things, okay? So I remember coming to Weissach, in fact to Werk 1 in Zuffenhausen, and collecting the first press car and taking it to the UK of this car. It was the first GT3 ever to go to the UK. It was in July 1999, it would have been.
So
and I drove it back, and I couldn't believe how cool it was. But there were a few things about it, okay? There were a few things about it. We took it to a track, and it was quicker than a standard Carrera, but not as much as I expected with the claimed 360 horsepower. And it ran out of brakes quite quickly.
Really?
We ran out of brakes a bit quick. So I then drove your car, the Gen 2 of this, and it felt quite different. It claimed 380 horsepower, but it felt like it had 50 more to me, and the brakes worked.
It was a different car. I mean, the first car that this was a homologation special.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the wheels. They were the exclusive wheels. So
Yeah.
they were available for normal Carrera as well. Look at the aero kit. I don't want to bash the car, it's just facts.
Yeah.
The aero kit was available as well for normal car. So the GT3, back in the days, it had a different drivetrain. The powertrain was completely different. It was a turbo engine without turbos, made into a high-revving, normally aspirated engine. It had the turbo brakes, but not a sophisticated cooling system. It was just stock.
Yeah.
And it had the roll cage and the seats. So, and that was the GT3. And on the second gen, we addressed everything. Brakes and the differentiation between the Carrera and the GT3 skyrocketed with the second gen, that's true.
And there's one over here, let's have a look at it. Come on, I think I drove this one in period as well.
Which one do you mean? The
now,
RS, yeah.
Do you go blue or red?
Blue, all the time. I mean, that as well was a car we've driven a lot, and that was kind of my dream project, because I always had this Carrera RS 2.7 as a poster above my bed when I was like 10 or 12. And we needed homologated parts for the race car that was named RS.
Because there was a split rear arm, wasn't there? There's
No,
rear
it was the wheel carrier in front, the uprights, because we had to lower the pivot point where the wishbone attaches to the wheel carrier to have a better, let's say, a better behavior when the car was, when the suspension was working. The camber change shouldn't be as high as it was on the race car that cost tires, so we had shorter stints than the rest. So we needed a different wheel carrier, and we had to homologate it. We needed 200 cars out there that feature that very same wheel carrier as well. And that was the main reason. But I thought, okay, let's do something else, because we can do a whole homologation model and maybe do something that reminds on the old RS 2.7. And that's why I like the blue. But there was a lot more to that car, because what rarely somebody knows, the first 200 cars had specially machined cylinder heads. A little
bit more power.
The combustion chamber was polished to even out CR rate through through the rev range. And on a street car, you don't notice it that much, but it was very important for the race car. And all this lightweight trickery on the car. It was the first car that featured a carbon fiber bonnet.
Yep.
It was the first car that had a huge wing back then. A huge wing was considered a huge wing.
It looks tiny now, but when it was new, we thought it was huge.
And it was the first one that had ram air.
Yep.
Yeah? And it was the first one in interior that featured Alcantara. That was the first time a street legal car anywhere, a sports car, featured Alcantara. It was just the steering wheel, it was just the gear shifter and the door handles, and it was the first time we had the perspex window, or the polycarbonate window, and a lot of other things. I could talk forever about this car, and it's so much fun to drive. And you were right, the horsepower difference between Gen 1 and Gen 2 was substantial, a lot more than on paper.
Yeah.
Because the 360 horsepower on the GT3 first gen, not all the cars had 360, let's put it like that, but the 381 on the Gen 2 and on the RS were more like 395-ish, and on the RS 400-ish. So we were underdoing it, I would say.
The steering in this car is standout. The steering in this car is incredible, isn't it? It's totally alive.
It was the first time that we featured ultra-high performance sport tires on a standard car. It was us and BMW with the M3 CSL battling.
Yeah.
I love the CSL. It was a good competitor. And we had Pirellis, they had the Michelins, and that influenced the steering feel a lot. The tire wall stiffness and everything. But it's a great car. It still is such a hoot to drive.
And it still looks fantastic. And when this car was built, you must have thought this is a tiny volume car.
Yeah.
Can we sell it for the money? And suddenly you realize there's a market for this car, because everyone wanted it, didn't they? Everyone wanted this car.
Funny thing is, especially the English market told me, oh no, I can't sell a car like this in England because it looks pornographic.
Yeah.
I said, wait some, no, it looks like 20 years ago, or no, 30 years ago in that case, the RS 2.7 looked as well. And it's lightweight and it's a fun car. And the overall estimates of all the worldwide markets where we intended to sell that car, I can talk about it now after all that time, was 195 cars, not one more. And at the end of the day, we ran out of parts at 670 cars.
And you could have made?
The orders were a lot higher. But that makes that thing so precious, maybe because it's a very small volume. We couldn't produce more back in the days because all the tooling was shot at the suppliers, because they choose tooling for only like 200 cars. So that's the story.
Right, 997, come on.
997.
This is unbelievable. Now, 997 GT3 was the first launch event that I met you on. And we were somewhere...
It was in Venice, in northern Italy.
Adria Raceway.
Adria Raceway.
Which is one of the worst circuits I've ever been to.
It's only braking all the time, hard braking all the time. But we couldn't get another racetrack back then. But it did quite well there, I think.
But this car, this is the first one that I owned myself. One of these. Right. This car is, it gets a bit forgotten, the 3.6 Gen 1 997, because everyone wants the Gen 2, which we'll come to. But actually, this engine is spectacular, isn't it?
Spectacular.
Beautiful, smooth engine.
It's only 415 horsepower. It's a next generation of the 996s, but it has a complete new exhaust system, complete new intake system, more CR, more revs. So we did a lot. It was a leap to that engine. And this 415 was a little bit a shy number as well. Some of them are 430-ish almost.
Yeah.
And it's the first time for the bespoke GT3 exhaust, the
with
middle
the two
exhaust,
center pipes.
with the two center pipes was introduced, that we still have today.
Yeah.
And it was the first time the Alcantara was in the whole interior, like on the seats, on the door panels, and on the steering wheel. It was a very special car, very successful. It had Michelin ultra high performance tires for the first time. We offered it with PCCB, and 6 gears, manual. That's all the sports car you ever need.
It is. It still looks fresh now. I mean, is this midnight? Is this midnight blue?
That's midnight blue. Yeah.
This still looks fresh now, doesn't it?
That was a car I used a lot, so I'm really. They did a good job refurbishing that because it had a lot of stone chips.
How often
that was the one we used at the press presentation, by the way.
Is it?
You drove that one.
So how many times do you go out in these things to remind yourself of the DNA of what you're making?
I think it's very important to touch base with the old cars from time to time to reset the internal button because in the memory you tend to glorify things of the past.
Yes.
Yeah. And some good things you tend to forget. So you always have to drive them back to back with the new cars. And I always do that, my whole team does it, to make sure that the new car will fit its line of ancestors correctly. And that the GT3 values and virtues, the genes, the DNA is still there. Lightweight feeling, good steering, lots of information, emotion, connectivity. That's our version of connected car, connected to the driver. And and the whole atmosphere of the car. And when you exit the GT3 and walk away from it, you simply have to turn around to look back at it because you like it so much. And part of that is it should be beautiful. It should look good. And so it's the bar is always set very high for the next model.
So there's a 3.8 Gen 2. We'll have a look in a minute there. Interesting. When this car was launched, I immediately thought the rear wing of this car looked really old. Now, I think I prefer the look of this one.
It's coming back again.
It's strange, isn't it? The way that you start out and then your opinion changes over time. I think this car actually now looks really cool.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I as well, especially thought this car looks pretty old against its predecessor. Now 10 years later, looking back, I'm not so sure anymore.
Right.
But the color helps a lot on that one.
It does.
It's a beautiful
Gen
car.
2. Now this was, I probably did more miles in these than any other. And I have to say, I always remember this car. I always remember just how this to me felt like GT product had really established itself. Everyone wanted one. You didn't even need to try and sell them. You knew that if you launched the car, you'd sell every single one straight away, didn't you? You were fully established now.
We're already on the way for success with that one, you're right. But that gave us the opportunity to even more differentiate between that one and the Carrera and between that one and the predecessor. Because we knew we could sell a couple of more cars to reinvest in the investment. And so on that one, we did the brakes, we did the center lock wheels, we had a 3.8 liter engine. We had different cam operation. We had even more horsepower, even more revs.
What's this, 440?
Huh?
Is this 440?
This is 435.
435. And the RS was how much?
The RS was 450, a 3.8, or 500,
yeah.
the 4.0.
We'll come to that in a minute.
And
I always remember, now this is one thing, and I have to call you out on this, I love this. So I've basically had to sit and listen to Andreas tell me about all the new bits about these cars for years. And he's a man with great information in his head. And I always remember him telling me about this new coating on these grills and how it had a coating that allowed more airflow through. And I remember thinking, come on, really? But you were adamant. You said, no, we get more airflow because there's a coating on that grill that's better.
Yeah. It didn't change the world, to be honest. But it was a good story to tell.
This is the thing about GT.
And it contains some truth.
And the people that buy these cars care about the details. See, I couldn't walk around this room and do this on many other cars because the audience would switch off. But the people that love these things will listen to the details all day long.
The car is about details, so we really like to concentrate on details because all the little things, the sum of the little things make the whole thing desirable, even for ourselves when we're driving it.
Can we just
Don't break something here.
No, can we just acknowledge? Remember these?
Huh?
Back in the day, do you remember those?
Yeah.
Do you remember those?
Get a good memory.
Look at this. Those are the old days when you used to fold your wing mirrors in. You didn't have a button. This was the lightweight solution. You used to do that.
Yeah.
As an owner, I always miss that.
True.
Now.
Today everything's electronically and with a little motor that most of the time is not weighing more than this.
Yeah, I know.
Technology goes on and on.
Now, over here is the one that everyone still talks about.
Still does, yeah.
And everyone on the video will go, well, you have one and you sold it.
it.
Yes, I sold it because I'd used it and cars are for using. Now, Andreas pointing at stats. I always remember you basically having an ashen white face explaining how much money it costs to have the indicator repeater made wider to fit the flare on here. Some incredible number, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's true. It was true.
To make that angle there.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe how many development costs flow into making lights of all kinds. You have to have the right angles to fulfill worldwide standards. This is something we have to struggle, we have to concentrate so hard upon, and the customer just doesn't notice it. There's so much things regarding regulations on any of those cars, and this was especially a headache.
How much?
I can't remember. I have to look it up.
It
In today's world, it seems a low number
Yeah.
because we're used to much more now.
Yeah.
But it was hundreds of thousands of euros, that's for sure.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think it was 250,000 euros just developing just development cost, not part cost, not tooling cost, development cost.
So this is the one, the 4-litre RS.
Yeah.
The,
Exactly as it should look, white with white wheels.
500 horsepower.
Yep.
The ultimate expression of the Metzger engine that everyone still talks about. It's a special car, isn't it?
It is a very special car. I love it to bits. I'm still driving exactly that example whenever I get the chance. When it's not raining, when it's good weather, when it's dry. It was a milestone, definitely. The 4-liter engine in a street car, we only used it in racing that days. And Hans-Georg Breuer, who was running the powertrain department at Porsche Motorsport, we were sitting together, and I kept nagging him, let's do a 4-liter for the street. I said, I don't know if it burns correctly for emissions and stuff. I said, hey, we have to try. And then we tried, and it worked. And the torque output of that engine, coupled to a 6-speed gearbox that is very low on friction and losses, made that car really a rocket in acceleration, in immediacy. That was really something else, especially in combination with the low weight. I mean, we had fenders, first time made out of carbon fiber, and the car is stripped totally. Everywhere's carbon fiber. And it just worked. The formula worked on that one, and the aerodynamics were a little bit better than before as well. So the whole package is still, in some regards, benchmark for today's cars.
Yeah.
I've driven this a lot because of the 992.
Speaking of which, it's under the cover. Can I?
Yeah, but it's too early to show it off. It's just we needed a parking spot for it, so you will have to be happy with looking it with a veil on top.
So I'm not actually allowed to. They flew me all the way.
We'll
to Germany.
watch you.
They flew me out to Germany to not see a car. Are you sure you're not Ferrari? It's the kind of thing Ferrari does, not what you do.
Well, no, we can look at the mule. We can look at the camouflage car.
I don't want to look at the mule. Well, we'll look at another.
It's very similar. It's a little bit more ugly.
Jesus. Right, let's have a quick look over here, because 991 was a big change. And I can see a Gen 1 991
black one.
here.
The 601 is a Gen 1.
Now,
that's a Gen 1.
This.
A very good example, by the way.
This is, well, we had an interesting experience in Barcelona in this, didn't we?
Yeah.
So Andreas and I went to drive this car. He invited me to drive this car very early. We went to Barcelona with a couple of other guys, and we were actually up in northern Spain, driving quite quickly. And there's a podcast where I talk about it actually, and it quickly became clear that the Spanish police weren't very pleased with us being there, and the day just got more and more out of control with the police. We weren't being out of control. Eventually, we had to just leave. Remember that? They were
chasing us with helicopters.
They landed a helicopter on the road. It was like a bad episode of the A-Team, and they landed a helicopter on the road, and they just said, you need to go now. And we thought, okay, we'll go. And we just left.
And we were sitting in the cars because we didn't see the others got hold up by the police with machine guns, and we were hiding away in this little ski resort in the middle of summer where nobody was. And we said, okay, let's sit it out. But nobody could speak Spanish. But poor me, I know how to speak Spanish, and so I had to go back. And he was so concerned about his camera standing at the roadside with all that footage of us drifting there. And we tried to snatch away the
I put the SD cards. I put the SD cards in my sock.
And they wouldn't let us near the camera with the submachine guns. I mean, that was something.
So this was possibly the biggest and most controversial step for you guys, because you incorporated a rear steering, an electric power steering system, and these are things, and it was PDK only.
We went away from the Metzger.
Yeah, and so all the internet forums are like on fire. It's not a GT3.
And we went away from the manual.
Yeah.
It was electrical steering, manual, no Metzger anymore, and rear wheel steering.
Yeah.
All in a GT3.
Yeah.
I mean, I never did more communication work as back then.
Yeah.
That was where the shut up and drive phrase comes from.
Yeah.
Because I really liked how the car got, because all that systems in the car help you feeling good in the car, help you feel more emotion. Now the car is loved. I mean, It's one of the most emotional cars we ever made.
And this engine,
it's a screamer.
We won't go into it. We know there were some engine problems, but actually this screamer, I'll never drive a production engine like this. The way that it revs for the last 1,000 is like a race car. Fantastic.
It makes some sounds that some drivers interpret as it's falling apart, but it's not. It's not a mechanical noise. It's really the gas change, the gas exchange that you hear, and it sounds metallic.
But the wider
people
front,
love it.
The wider front axle, I can remember we had that very car with us in Barcelona.
It was that very.
It was that very car, and I remember driving that and thinking, that's going to make this feel too big and too heavy. At the moment you turned into a corner in this, the front axle of this car is so much better than that car.
I know. We didn't want to bash our own old car, but we had to show the leap in driving dynamics. That thing.
So you've just popped open your fuel flap lid there. You want to?
Maybe.
So what you've got is
it wants to drive. It wants to be fed.
So what you've got is a load of journalists and a load of people like me saying, oh, it's not got a manual gearbox and it's not got this, it's not got that. So what do you do in response?
911R. There's two of the examples. Actually, I have to be quite open. We couldn't do two different gearboxes with that big project that it was.
Yeah.
So we had to wait a little bit. And to introduce the gearbox, the manual gearbox, we put out the 911R, a super lightweight, super driver's car orientated version of the GT3 without a wing, with lots of lightweight trickery and lots of additional emotion, only in combination with a manual gearbox, even with a single mass flywheel if we wanted one.
Yeah.
And from that point on, the star was born, and we had the gearbox in the shelf for the next generation GT3.
This is a fantastic car.
It was. It still is.
There's something about these without a wing. I know I'm an old man, but I just love them without a wing. Houndstooth interior. The green one is obviously the finest looking one ever made. I'm not going to stand here for too long because I might get wobbly knees. Can we take the cover off now?
Huh?
Can we take the cover off the car now?
No, sorry.
Jesus.
I told you.
Right, okay. So
I'm not allowed to do this.
Okay. Right.
I lose my job. I can't build any more of these cars.
Let's come back to another film we made. Do you remember this? This was a good one. Do you remember this, Nilo?
Oh yeah, that was a good one. But it was purple.
We get to drive one of these,
purple.
and you just lined all the colours up. We were in Weissach. We were at the test track. They don't do that very often. Then he went, do you want a purple one? Do you want a silver one? Do you want a white one? I was, well, we'll take Mr. Purple. And Mr. Purple became quite famous after that. I think the real Mr. Purple got destroyed, didn't he?
The video was still one of the best videos ever shot. And it was the first video anybody could shoot on Weissach test track with a drone.
Yes.
That was completely unheard of before that. So you really had some trust.
This is a spectacular car because it was quite a big step in terms of the track performance over the standard car. And then we had this was 4 litres now, wasn't it?
This is a 4 liter engine, and it is definitely a car that was a game changer when it comes to trackability. That was such a track tool. We never had such an extreme car with these vents in the carbon fiber fenders, with that aerodynamics the car offered. The downforce on that car back then when we put it to the market was benchmark. There were other companies claiming they had the same. We had them in the wind tunnel. It was not even close. It really makes 350 kilos of downforce at top speed, and we had this wide rear axle. We had 21 inches in the back for the first time. There was a lot of innovation in that car, and it was in different league if you compare that car to the predecessor RS.
Do you think this is the most popular car you'd made? Because the volume, you could have sold 10,000 of these, couldn't you? There were so many people wanting one of these.
It was quite a success. I mean, the car aesthetically is really a statement.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. It's not for doing your errands with, but it's a proper track tool. And most of the people that owning RSs, they're really tracking the car. And the first generation was very successful. We couldn't build enough of those, and the second even more. Standing right beside it here, the green. I love the green, and there was another step from that one to that one.
But looking down this line here now, all I can see is just fenders with wings.
Yeah.
I'm going to ignore the GT3 RS Gen 2 for a minute because well, it's not easy to do because that is an amazing motor car. And
It
people
is.
don't actually talk about it too much because it got a bit overshadowed by this thing here in the corner. This Thug. Have a look at this Thug here. So this is a midnight blue GT2 RS with a red interior, which if you wrote it on a piece of paper wouldn't work, but it does in the raw. Now, from which weird part of your brain did this car come? 700 horsepower
From
in
the
a 911.
deepest, darkest sides of the brains of all my engineering team guys. I mean, this is really something we tried very hard to get the utmost in emotion and performance out of a turbocharged car. We knew that most of our customers are really the normally aspirated, high revving kind of customers, but I wanted to make a turbo that is as emotional as a high revving, normally aspirated engine, which is kind of hard because a turbo normally builds up power and then stays at that power, and at higher revs it goes down a little bit. I wanted a turbo that sounded like a 930 of the N70s, like this brute growl, completely different to a GT3, and produce power up to the rev limiter. The more revs, the more power. That's why we made a complete new engine almost out of the turbo engine, and put all the lightweight trickery of the RS, GT3 RS, into that one, and even more. Like the Weissach package at its first appearance, magnesium wheels, and I could talk forever, but people always ask me if you can have 3 cars that you made, the GT2 RS would always be one of them.
Yeah.
It changes with the mood I am, but it's always a GT2 RS.
It's quite a good garage, though. You've got a bit to choose
well, yeah,
from. Okay, so can we just...
Told you. Let's look at this one.
I don't want to look at that one.
It fits perfectly in its line of ancestors.
Okay, so here we have...
That one looks similar.
Here we have the new 992 GT3, the reason I'm here. And this is the development car. And well, the reason I'm slightly annoyed is I can see, and you can't see, I can see blue under here, okay? So we know this car is blue, and it's covered in stickers, and you can't quite see what it's all about. And I don't know what it looks like underneath quite. We've been out in it. I've had a passenger ride in it. I can tell you that it sounds like a GT3. It sounds like a GT3, and it appears to go around corners like a GT3, but I'm saying nothing more than that till I've driven it myself, because I'm not interested in third-party opinions.
And I can tell you, it looks like a GT3.
It does-ish.
I can give you a glimpse, okay?
Before we... okay.
A glimpse. Be prepared.
Ready? This is a world exclusive.
Yeah.
Ready? Okay. All right, that's a bit different to what I expected. That looks mega.
Does it look good?
That cutout there looks mega.
Yeah.
Vents. Oh, yes.
Enough seen.
Oh, come on, man. Just
It's too early. We got embargoes on this.
Oh, who cares about embargo?
I get in trouble.
What? Well, you can't see the front without the back, can you? A bit of back. Come on. You do that. Bit of back. Yes.
Just some seconds. Everybody thinks the Swan neck spoiler looks ugly.
Let's have a look.
It doesn't.
Oh, it really doesn't. Oh.
It doesn't.
Okay. What's the color?
And it's highly effective.
What's the color?
Highly effective. The color is called
blue.
blue.
It's a cool color as well. Okay. That's it. That's your lot. That's all you get to see. Looks good though, doesn't it? Do you reckon it looks good?
You will love it. You will love it.
Can we just kind of have a quick look at a touring, please?
Okay.
Now.
One of my all-time favorites as well. Touring.
What color's that?
This is iris blue.
Iris blue.
Iris blue. It's not
that really
midnight.
suits it.
It has this little bit purple shade.
Yeah.
It's not Mr. Purple, maybe it's Mrs. Purple. But these are male cars normally.
So,
I love it. In sunlight, it's spectacular.
Some people think that this is a distraction from what a GT3 should be, that a GT3 should be wings, circuit. But I've got one and I love it and I use it the whole time. But I think this is a great addition to what a GT3 should be. A GT3 doesn't have to just be circuit wings, does it? I mean, in your philosophy?
We proved that point home because the Touring was received so well by the market. And I mean, it's not everybody's thing to go to the track, but a lot of 911 aficionados, they like this high revving motorsport technology. They don't want to run around in a car with a big spoiler. They want to be a little bit less obtrusive. And I think that's a perfect car. You could go to the opera with that. It's like a car James Bond would drive if there wouldn't be any Aston Martins in the world.
How cool would that be?
But,
James Bond driving a GT3 Touring. Now we're talking. Broccoli's, get on it.
And it's only available as a manual car, so it's a driver's car. It doesn't want to copy the 911R because it doesn't feature the lightweight trickery. It's a GT3 for not everyday use, but almost. You can use it as a daily, and it's just a beautiful car. It sits down low. It has all the advantages any GT3 has. It has the suspension, it has the gearbox, it has the high revving engine. It's a stealth GT3, if you put it like that. And it's very usable.
Well, mine gets used every day. My dog likes mine.
Yeah,
Let's talk me around some details on this car. So we have 510 horsepower.
We have more than 500, yeah, maybe more than 510, but we're still in revving 9,000.
Yeah.
And the engine is the next step up from the Speedster engine, and it fulfills all the worldwide strict emission regulations. And it still feels lively, and it kicks in, and it has this immediacy you expect from a GT3. It has the noise.
The noise is good, because I was fearing that with the new WLTP regs that it was going to sound a bit dull inside. It really doesn't sound dull.
It sounds maybe a little bit more mature, but on the inside, I'm afraid to say it's even louder than the old one.
Yeah.
On the outside, it's loud enough to,
Do we agree?
To be careful when you're doing like the same curve 10 times when you're shooting it.
Do we agree that actually the exhaust noise thing got out of control over the last 10 years with OEMs?
Yeah.
The valved exhaust, when they were open, just got stupid.
We should be careful with that, so we don't want to think people that the GT drivers are not respectful. And we have to look at the environment as well. We have to secure the certain kind of emotional acoustical value that comes with the GT3. And that's still possible even with the nowadays regulations.
Yeah.
But it's not only the engine. For the first time, we have a double wishbone front axle in that car, which is
There's a whole load of Porsche
thing.
racing drivers out there at the moment going, thank God we've been waiting for that for 20 years.
And it really helps the car. The car has gotten a little bit bigger because the platform 992 is a little bit bigger, but it has advantages. It has a wider track in the front, wider track at the back. And in combination with that complete new front axle suspension system, the car is more performant on the track, as a matter of fact, a lot more. It's really a different league than its predecessor. And it doesn't weigh more than the smaller predecessor. And we're very proud on that. We've got a carbon fiber hood, even on the standard car, and lots of lightweight trickery that are normally reserved for the RS cars are incorporated in that one, and the body shell is lighter. Despite being bigger, it's stiffer.
Is it much stiffer?
It is. You feel it when you drive it.
Yeah.
You'll see that.
Yeah.
It allows a lot more possibilities in suspension tune-up.
And rear suspension is the same as the standard car?
Which is the standard car?
As in the
Carrera.
Series
The suspension is complete, and there's not one part that's interchangeable.
Really?
It's completely different. Every strut, every steering rod, every wishbone, every control arm is completely bespoke. And most of them are ball joint. So it's a very precise car, which is a virtue at GT3 radiates. So as well in that one.
So GT3 is available with a manual and a PDK?
We have both options because I'm sick of telling people what is the right combination, because it's an individual point, so people should choose.
Will there be a Touring?
A little later, after we put this on the market, yes.
There will be a Touring?
Yeah.
Will there be a convertible?
No.
Will there be a diesel?
Yes.
Will there be an electric one?
Absolutely.
21s at the back, 20 at the front?
Yep. So tires, a little bit bigger than before, 315s in the back, 255s in the front, new spec tires. We'll have an option for the super track tire, the Cup R, on that base model as well, on the GT3, which helps for the track. It's a perfect track tool, absolutely. Downforce is up by at least 50%. Coefficient drag and everything went down, so the car accelerates faster at higher speeds. No magazine tests that, the acceleration between 140 miles to 170.
We can't do that in
Maybe
the
you
UK.
should do that.
We can't. And the other thing that's interesting is, you can't see in there at the moment, there's a lever for the PDK. So if you want, you can play DTM driver from the early 90s and do your shifts on the, and we both agree actually you prefer doing that. So when he was out in the car earlier today, he's shifting on that lever. I'm thinking that looks like good fun.
I think it's an important interface. So if somebody even in a PDK car wants to shift manually with the right hand, you should be able to do so.
Exhaust, still out in the middle.
Still out in the middle, a little bit bigger diameter, huge diffuser, helps a lot in aerodynamics. So that was a big leap from the diffuser we had on the predecessor. That really helps. Underbody totally revised, and a whole aerodynamic concept was put a lot of effort in, and it pays off.
One thing that you're going to be asked, I'm sure, is that the power step is not so big over the last car. 500 is enough on the road, isn't it? I mean,
a car that size and that weight and with 500 horsepower is enough to put you in jail any minute, anywhere on a street legal situation. We concentrated on drivability, of confidence-inspiring information that comes from the driver, from the car to the driver. The car is a lot quicker on the ring, so that pays off, despite having only a 10 horsepower upgrade in comparison to the predecessor. So it's about the whole car, not only about the power available. We're not track racing that car, or let's say, what's it called? It's
drag racing.
Drag racing. It's a car for the circuit, and there it's really a situation where it shines.
That's interesting. Now we've had a sneak peek of that.
It looks a lot better in real, right?
It does. This camo is a clever
I'm
job.
always very, very keen on making camouflage as ugly as possible. Look at these things here. I mean, you can put them inside. I mean, this is just a cover making the car look ugly.
Yeah.
So
I'm always in camouflage myself, actually.
Me
That's
too.
why I look the way I do. If you actually take this off, it's like Kananga in Live and Let Die. I'm actually stunning underneath. It's genuinely beautiful, but I only show Neil when we finish work. Now, is it the usual thing that you can have a club sport spec and you get a fire extinguisher and you get a cage?
Exactly, you get the roll cage if you're longing for one, and you'll be more safe on the track days. It'll be 15 kilos more to haul around, but I mean, what don't we do for safety?
Yeah.
And there'll be some other options available for the car that might fall into the right place at the customers. And we got bigger brakes, 408s, steel rotors.
408.
408s, so
Jesus.
that grew in size, but not in weight, only a little bit. Was worth it. And yeah, the whole package is really, really very promising.
One big question for the UK customers, okay? Paint to sample, PTS. Now, on the last GT3, everyone in the UK got a bit upset because they couldn't get PTS.
It was only on the last RS.
Not that you'd get upset about it, or not that they'd come to you and whinge to you about it at all.
I know that problem. The problem was not that we couldn't offer the PTS. We had, for legislational reasons, solely valid for the UK, produced the very first batch of cars for the UK.
You see, you were first.
And it's absolutely, and it's normal that PTS is offered only after 3 or 4 months when a car is into production. But we had to make the first batch, a block of PCGB cars or UK cars in the first 3 months. So sorry, but we were working on that one, that PTS would be available sooner. And we don't have this legal situation anymore with the UK. Yeah. So the customer of that car should be able to fine, and they have a fair chance of getting their.
So you should get it on this one. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I don't think you need it because the blue is so beautiful.
The blue is beautiful.
It is.
It's always a pleasure, and it makes me feel a bit old, actually. This does.
What should I say? I mean, these are all creations done by me and my team.
You've made a few cars. Like the orange one, we didn't even talk about the orange one. I remember taking the orange one from you and the GOs and them saying, where are you going? And I said, we're just going to go up the road. And we didn't tell them we were going to the Nordschleife. I was with, I think I was with Mark Bramley. Was I with Jamie Littman? So, and I think we just drove it to the Nordschleife, did 2 tourist and foreign laps and drove it back again. And when they saw the story, they went apeshit. You can't take our car onto the circuit. I'm like, ooh, sorry about that. Yeah. So, lots of stories.
On that orange one, I have a story as well. That was the very car I brought my son home from the hospital when he was born.
Really?
Yeah. And he doesn't know that, but it's still his favorite car is the 997 Gen 1 in orange. Strange, but...
It's an amazing legacy, and it's taken a few years, but it's 20 years of good gear now, isn't it?
Yeah,
20 years.
2 decades. Yeah, quite some time. But
well,
we've got idea for more to come, so...
I can't wait to have a go in this when I'm allowed to drive it. Well, can I drive it next year, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Andreas Preuninger, head of GT cars, thank you very much for your time.
Chris Harris, thanks for yours. It was fun as always.
Cheers.